Díoghuiomh go léir a cóide agus tá fáilte ród. Welcome to be my guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lear Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary. My very special guest today has suffered through the horrors of Nazism. As a young boy, 14 years of age, he was a prisoner at Auschwitz-Birkenau, the death camp, where his father, his mother, and his young brother perished. At times it was very, very difficult, this interview, because he wanted to forget as much as he wanted to remember. But the pain etched on his face and his daughter Susan's face will forever live with me, I have to say. And I hope that their testimony will be forever, I suppose, an example of the importance of Holocaust education. Thank you. Hello, Michael, how are you?
I'm just fine. I took a licking and I keep on ticking.
But tell me, you were born in Białystok.
Yeah,
in Poland.
The Bialys are good, let me tell you. Can't beat the Bialys.
Bialys, tell her what Bialys were.
Bialys?
Tell her.
Well, everybody knows what a Bialy is.
Well, she's from.
I don't, I'm here in Ireland.
Tell her what a Bialy is.
A Bialy is something that's, it's, how should I describe a Bialy?
It's round like a bagel.
It's round like a bagel.
And what's in the middle of it?
In the middle, it has a little bit of
Onion.
Yeah.
Onion.
Well, that sounds lovely.
It sounds good, right?
So
Sounds very good. You were going to sing a song for me there a second ago.
What song were you gonna sing?
Well, I'm gonna sing in the Russian. Dol по улице метелица метет, за метелицей мой миленький идет. Эх, постой, постой, красавица моя, только глядеться радостно тебе. Oi!
Hi.
How's my Russian? My Russian is good?
Well, it's better than my Russian. I don't speak Russian. So how many languages do you speak?
I speak Russian, I speak Yiddish, I speak
Polish,
English,
A little.
a little bit of English.
Yeah, right.
And I took a licking.
Okay, you told her that.
And I kept on ticking.
And you kept on ticking. Tell me about your story, Michael. How did you ending up in Auschwitz-Birkenau? What happened to you during the war from the very beginning?
Well, they came and they looked for us. They looked wherever they can get Jews. They picked them out and sent them to Auschwitz.
But tell her about the Białystok ghetto first.
You were in the Białystok ghetto first.
Yes, I was in the Białystok ghetto too.
Tell her about the ghetto.
What was that like?
Well, it's not easy for us.
Describe it.
We had to, if we had something to eat, we were lucky. And it was just a hard life. And
Tell who lived with you in the ghetto, Dad.
who lived
In the
with me?
apartment with you.
Who lived with you? Were you there in the ghetto on your own?
No.
No.
Who were you with?
Oh, think.
Your parents?
Yes, my parents. Yes.
Your brother?
My brother is right.
Anybody else?
That's it.
No, you lived with a lot of people in the apartment.
You think I remember?
Okay.
Because I remember. You think I'm a young gringo?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
If the two of you actually put the camera on you and you can help
But
you can help
you know,
Susan.
Okay.
but
So
you know what I like?
What do you like?
I play my fiddle.
Are you going to play something for me today?
I'll play.
on the mandolin, he'll play.
I'll play on the mandolin.
Excellent. I'm
Okay.
looking forward to hearing about that.
You name the song and I'll play for you.
No, you play.
I was listening to you playing that one, and I don't know the name of it, but it's da 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 da.
Yeah.
Da da da.
What's the name of it?
Da 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 da. Okay.
Дали яблони и груши поплели, туманы над рекой. Приходила на меня Катюша, ай-яй-яй-яй-яй-яй-яй-яй.
Yaive.
Now singing and the rebel
All
mela
right. So
is the presence of April.
can you tell her about what happened after when you were taken to the camps, what that was like?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that.
What can I tell you? I hate to talk about it.
But talk about it.
I remember, well, they took
Speak
us.
louder.
They took us, and they took us away, and this is given us.
That in English, in
And
English.
it was a Zachumway.
That in English.
In English?
See.
My English is not so good.
You want to tell me, Susie or Susan?
Okay. So they took him from the ghetto. What year? I think 1943.
That's correct.
And they all went to Auschwitz. So what happened? Tell her about what it was like on the transport, on the trains that went to Auschwitz. Describe the train, Dad.
Do you think I remember?
Okay. Sorry.
This is going to be fabulous. Seriously,
I really don't want to remember.
I know you don't want to remember, but it's important to teach about it,
Right.
so that we all talk about it and remember about it.
Right.
So what can you share with us about it, Dad?
Sure. I took a big
Dad. Okay, so Mary. I'm sorry.
you're all right.
I'm all right, yeah.
This is going to go out as it is because it's so, it's so not normal. It's understandable that somebody like your dad would not want to remember.
Well, we can show. I'd like you to show
I'd like to
your
see
number.
the
Here's
number.
his number, 100,669, and this star meant he was a Jew. So this is forever a piece of history right here that we're looking at. This is his prisoner number. He was no longer Michael Metelitz. He was 100,669. And when they got to Auschwitz, right out when they got off the trains, they were separated. His mother and younger brother. How old was your brother at that time? 11? 2 years younger, right?
Yeah.
So he was 11. His mother and his 11-year-old brother were sent to one side. They were immediately sent to the gas chambers because they weren't deemed good enough for work. My dad and his father were on the other side, and they were forced into the slave labor. My father's number has the 669. His dad's was 670. So his dad was standing right behind him when they were tattooed. So once they were slave laborers, they were tattooed as numbers. And his dad developed after 3 months. What happened to him on his knee? He got some sort, do you remember? He got hurt, and he admitted himself to the so-called hospital, and there was really no hospital. So he never saw his father again after that. So my father lived with nobody else of family members, and survived the war. But what did you do in the camps? Do you remember what were some of the work assignments you would given, Dad?
I don't remember.
Okay. So he was at the end of the war. Toward the end of the war, they were bringing all the remaining prisoners to a train to be taken and shot in the woods. And my dad jumped off the train, and he ran and ran, and he ended up at some farm in Poland, and he hid there and lived on raw potatoes until he saw the Red Army tanks come, and that's how he was liberated. But yeah, so he suffered quite a bit. He was extremely starved to death, really starved, and was in a hospital after the war. Nuns took care of him in Germany. Lived after the war in a hospital for a few months until he was nourished back to health. And
but it's funny, Susan, the trauma of what he suffered.
And he never wanted to talk about it until that 1996, when he answered that Shoah Foundation ad by Steven Spielberg. And when he finally released his story from his heart, he became a totally different man. He was very, very cold as growing up for me, never really loving, until he released his story. Most Holocaust survivors never really went for help after the war, as far as psychologically. So they held in all their pain for so long. And my dad is an example of that. And once he released his story in 1996, he became so much more loving, so much more affectionate, so much more understanding. But holding in all that pain for so long made him bitter and hard and tough.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
Can you understand I know you can understand the obvious horror of trying to put into words and trying to make other people understand what is hardly understandable to yourself, and you've gone through it like your dad has gone through it. How can he possibly explain to somebody like me, who is sitting from the comfort of another country, another generation like you? We haven't gone through it. You're suffering it secondhand, but you're also a victim. And and to be quite honest with you, it's written all over your face, the sorrow. And I just, it's hard to watch your dad, because I can see the obvious pain that's still there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's something he just doesn't like to talk about it. It's just so hard to bring up such past. I mean, losing everyone, that you love, and just like being on your own at such a young age, right, Dad?
Yeah, but I don't like to really talk about it.
I know you don't. But why are we talking about it today? So that we can spread tolerance, so that we could teach love, so that we could teach to love someone from their heart.
My answer is I took a licking, and I kept on ticking.
That's right.
But Michael, what was it about the Wiesenthal, not the Wiesenthal, but what was it about the Shoah Foundation that made you decide to talk?
Yeah, why did you answer that Shoah ad? What was your purpose?
What was my purpose?
When you made those videos, why did you want to do that?
I just...
You wanted to what?
Wanted to know people what we had to go through.
Mm-hmm.
People should know.
Louder.
And I always use that expression. I took a licking and I kept on ticking.
And why did you want to share that? Did you want to tell people how important it is to love one another for who they are?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And one really important thing that my dad always did teach me is to love all people. Because he was persecuted for being, just because he was a Jew, he was persecuted. He taught us to love everyone. And we grew up with that in our hearts. And, we learned to love all.
How many members of Michael's family
Perished?
perished?
Well, his mother, his father, his younger brother, and many cousins, and his whole other extended family in Europe. Yeah.
What was it like in Europe before the rise of Nazism?
What was it like in Bialystok?
A normal life. And we ate the best bialys because I come from Bialystok.
Right. So bialys were something that originated in Bialystok, and he remembers that as a boy enjoying eating them. They were big, big pieces, round pieces of dough stuffed with onions, really hot. They would sell them on the streets of Bialystok,
right.
and all the kids loved it, and that's
Yes.
something he remembers. What do you remember about how you went to school in the winter? How did you go to school? Do you remember going?
I put on my blades and the shoes.
Ice skates.
I used to ice skate.
Mm-hmm. What was life like though? Did you have friends who were of all faiths, or did you have friends? Did everybody get along in Bialystok before the war?
The kind of a guy that I am, everybody was my friend. Everybody.
So you had friends of all faiths.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How hard was it when the Nazis came and you realized that people were treating you differently because you were a Jew? And did you know that you were you were a religious family?
Were you religious though?
Was I religious?
Was your family religious?
I used to go to synagogues, yeah.
Every week?
Sometimes skip.
Speak louder.
Depending on the weather.
Okay, so they would, but they were conservative. They weren't religious.
Yeah, they were conservative Jews. But you were in Ampfing-Waldlager, which was a concentration camp, and Dachau, and Gross-Rosen, and Auschwitz 1 and 2.
Auschwitz.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Auschwitz and Dachau.
Mm-hmm.
And Gross-Rosen by Breslau.
Mm-hmm. By Breslau, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What were your how were they all hard experiences, all of those camps?
And I don't want to remind myself of it.
Okay, but so obviously they were very hard experiences.
I tell people that I kept them.
Okay, yes, we know that
I was
part.
strong enough to live through it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Susan.
That was with me.
Yeah.
Strong enough to live through it. You certainly were strong enough to live through it, Michael. What was it about you that you think helped you to survive? Was it your faith, or was it your determination just to survive?
I thought to myself, that's enough going through so much. God, please give me a break.
You prayed to God.
And I prayed to God.
And also I remember him telling me that his father encouraged him to survive. His father kept, right? Isn't that what you told me?
My father told me, Maisha, you will survive. That's what
and
he
live
said
to tell the story.
That's right. That's what my father told me. Yes.
So because of his father's words, he kept that in his heart, and that kept him strong. And
did the fact that you liked music and love singing keep you going?
I play a few instruments.
Mm-hmm.
I play the fiddle and the mandolin.
Yes. Did that help you? Like, did music?
Music helped me a lot.
Was the key to survival, right?
Yeah,
thinking.
Absolutely.
Do you remember about people singing? You told me something about a man who was an opera singer in the camps who would sing all the time. Do you remember that?
Yes.
What was that like? Did that help people?
Absolutely. Raise their morale.
It raised your morale. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Music is, I take my fiddle or I take my mandolin.
Yeah.
And you name the song and I'll play it.
Right. And it makes you feel good, right?
Makes me feel good.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
while you're singing, you can forget about everything else. you can concentrate on the words of the songs and forget about what you've suffered?
Well, that is
Or why?
not unforgettable.
Yeah, it's unforgettable. Of course it is.
And God was with me. He gave me a break, and here I am to tell the story.
And he's married 70 years, right, Beth?
So you had a successful marriage.
Oh yeah, I married an American girl.
And you met when you came to America.
That's correct.
What?
Nice.
Why did you decide? How did you make the journey to America?
I had relatives there,
And they sent for him.
and they sent for me. Yeah.
How did you come here? By what? By plane? By boat?
Boat, I'd imagine, was it?
You came by boat with Braca, right?
Yeah, by boat. Yeah,
By boat. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you came into Boston.
of course.
Mm-hmm.
You remember?
Well, you told me the story, so I'm telling her.
Yeah.
Right.
She's a good daughter. How many children have you, Michael?
How many children do you have, Dad?
How many kids?
3 kids, Dad.
3 kids. Yeah, 3 kids.
He's like my dad. People used to ask my dad, how old is Mary? And he'd have to turn to my mother and ask.
That's what he just did.
Or he'd give the wrong age on the phone, and my mother would say, "Oh, for God's sake, Cyril, that would mean we weren't married even when we had her." Do you know that? It made
So, Mary, so can I just say this is Mrs. Metelitz, my mom.
Hello, how are you?
Okay, thank you. How are you?
Oh, sure, I'm grand. How are you? What was it like when you first met Michael? Had you any understanding of Michael's? Are you a survivor yourself?
No, I
Speak loudly.
was born here in the USA. Yes. Well, we had family. My mother and my grandma, who lived with us, had family in Poland, and my grandmother had a son with 5 children, and none of them survived. We knew what was going on in the concentration camps because of them. And when I met Michael, well, I felt sorry for him. I did. He was a very handsome young man who came to this country. I met him. He lived across the street from me, and he lived with people that my father knew from the old country. He was a boarder there. He paid rent to live in this apartment, and I met him, and that was it. I mean, we fell in love.
It was love at first sight.
Closer to me.
Love at first sight, right? And I taught him a lot of English because he didn't really know how to speak properly. He went to night school, and he learned, and he's very good for a foreigner. He has very little accent. He had, and he went into the army, unfortunately, when we were married only 1 year. And I traveled to Missouri, one of the states in the United States.
Yeah.
If you hear me lisping, I'm just trying out new teeth. And I'm lisping because I'm not used to it. Well, anyway, we were married.
I remember a dentist when I was working in a place one time saying to me, "Are they your own teeth?" And I jokingly said, "I'm breaking them in for somebody else." And he looked and he said, "Oh," and then he realized it was a joke.
I wish somebody would break them in for me. Anyway, so we were married 1 year. It was very hard to get an apartment because after World War II in the United States, they weren't building really. And so we finally got this little beautiful apartment, and we furnished it. And then he got notice from the Army that he's being drafted. And that was a horrible time for me because I didn't want to live all alone. So I went back to live with my mother. So we kept
As you do.
But we kept the apartment. I paid the rent. I figured hopefully he'll come back and we'll have a little place of our own. So then he got notice while he was in the army that he's going overseas, and it was during the Korean War, and he went to Korea and he spent 1 year there, and I missed him terribly, and he missed me, of course. And finally, he came back to the United States, and we met him at the plane, I remember, at the LaGuardia Airport, and the soldier this handsome soldier was walking out of the plane with a backpack, and it was Michael. And that was
history.
That was history.
And you got married what year?
1951.
1950.
February 3rd was our 70th wedding anniversary.
What date?
February 3rd. February 3rd.
February 3rd. But was Michael traumatized? Did you have any sense of the trauma Michael was experiencing? Did he not talk about his experiences, like he's obviously quite shut down in the sense that he doesn't want to think about it? Was that always the case until he gradually started to talk? At what stage did you know how much he was after suffering?
I knew at the beginning he never spoke about it. I had to ask questions. What did you do? Where did you go? What was the procedure at the camp? Things like that. And he missed his father. He thought he would be with him, but the poor man, he had a swollen knee, and he thought that if he would go to the doctor at the camp, they would do something. Yes, they did something. Mm-hmm. They murdered him. That's what they did. So he was left alone. He knew he would be alone. His mother and little brother were executed. And
they were gassed.
And they were gassed and then burnt. That's what they did. And then it was a terrible time, for him. And he told me about everything. I asked him a lot of questions.
But he was very cold, right? He was never loving, never warm. Couldn't really express his affection to any of his kids. It's
but
me and my.
With respect, Susan, there had to be a sense of warmth there when your mom was attracted to him, and when there had to be at some level he could show emotion towards your mom, but for some reason there was a blockage.
Yeah, for his kids.
For his children.
Yeah. I always wonder about that. I do. But I'm just thankful that he released it and was able to express it, even though at that point I was like 30 years old when he did that tape for Shoah.
How old was he when he was in the camps?
Well, he was taken into the camps in the ghetto in 41, so he was 36, 14 when he was in the ghetto in 41, and then in 43 he was 15 when he was taken to the camp.
I'm just thinking, in a lot of cases with people I've spoken to, they had no childhood of their own, and if you look at Art Spiegelman, and I keep quoting and mentioning it, the book Mouse by Art Spiegelman, he had no relationship with Vladek, his dad. And Vladek and his second wife had absolutely no relationship, even though both of them were survivors. And you'd think that would have connected them, but it didn't. It actually distanced them because they were constant reminders. In some respect, possibly, the disconnect between him and his children was because he had no childhood himself. He didn't know what it was. I mean, he was 13 when the Nazis.
Yeah. He always says that
he was 12 when the Nazis took over.
Yeah, he missed out on his entire teenage years. Totally missed out on those.
And he was possibly in the camp as well with a lot of adults, so he was probably able to speak to adults and his wife in a different way than he had no ability to speak as a child. because that was taken from him in the camps.
Yeah.
So he
Right.
couldn't understand you. How difficult was it for you going to school and that, knowing? Did you feel like there's a book called I Was a Child of Holocaust Survivors, and she talks about how she felt somehow special in a strange sort of a sense from everyone else, because nobody else had a survivor who was a father or a survivor who was a mother. And at the same time, she was addicted. She said Auschwitz and the Holocaust was like a drug to her.
Me too. And I've read so much about it. Like ever since I'm young, all I've wanted to do was suck up more and more information to really, really try and feel my father's experiences. I also did something that most Jews are not supposed to have tattoos. It's against Jewish law. But I decided, hold on a second, let me set this up better. I decided that I was going to get a tattoo of my father's number on my own arm, so that when people ask me about it, I'm having trouble showing it here.
Yeah.
Ask me about it, I can teach them a piece of history. My dad's a piece of history. This is a piece of history sitting here. And when people ask me, what are those numbers on your arm, Susan? That's exactly the reason why I got this tattoo, so that I can teach people tolerance and tell my dad's story. Every time someone asks me, what are those numbers? Even my students, I'm a teacher, I teach 3rd grade, I teach 8-year-olds. Every time they ask me, what are those numbers? I'm teaching them a piece of history. My dad, Michael Metelitz, is a piece of history. And we both have the same number, so that I can share that with everyone. Yeah.
It seems like war and genocide makes victims of more than just the physical victims at the time. It also makes generations of victims because of the inability of one generation to articulate the horrors that they went through, and the almost obsession with the second generation in many cases to try to understand that which there is no understanding of. I mean, how can anybody understand what it was? I mean, my God, if you stood in your dog's paw by mistake, your soul would feel like it was after breaking, let alone your heart. And, you know, to actually remove all sense of humanity from yourself and not see another human being, not see their humanity purely because you're so close to watching them or judging them for their ethnicity.
Right.
I mean, but you to me are like Eisenstein, and she constantly talks about having to inject herself all the time with more and more to give herself that high that Holocaust gives her.
Yes, and I feel the same way.
She has to keep on getting more and more and more and more information about her. And she said she never knew where her parents' pasts ended, or her parents' lives ended and hers began, because it all seemed to be all one.
Yes.
You have you're and I suppose I'm an only child. My life was wrapped up so much in my parents that I hardly knew where their lives ended and mine began. And when they died, my life was, in many respects, I felt I had died with them. Yeah. And I think maybe that's why I understand where you're coming from. You are searching so much for your dad's past.
I am. Just I like, it's almost like I wish I can not relive his experiences, but I don't know. I always say, why him? Why did he have to suffer so much? I need to know more. I want to know exactly what happened. So yeah, I suck up as much information as I can on that, whether it's documentaries, movies, books, whatever I can get my hands on, I read everything. So yes, I can relate to that totally. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You should read that book. It's a graphic novel. It's done in a form of, it's a memoir, but it's done in the form of there's lots of pictures in it, and she really just talks about how her parents. Did you sense that other Holocaust survivors, because your dad, and I don't want to be talking about your dad while he's there in the sense as if he wasn't there, but I'm conscious that he's doesn't really want to talk about it, but he doesn't have a problem listening to us talking about it. You know, a lot of Holocaust survivors feel that the people they became friends with who were also Holocaust survivors became their children's surrogate families. I know that a friend of mine, Toba Bramchik in Toronto, her dad was a survivor of 5 camps, and they all became very close to the survivors' friends, and because they had lost so many of their own family in the camp, that they didn't have biological aunts or uncles, but they looked on these Holocaust survivors as their aunts and uncles and families. And it was through them, they could talk amongst themselves about the Holocaust, but not with their own family.
Wow. Yeah.
Except that her dad always spoke about it to her. So she was very aware of it from all the time. Others' parents never spoke. Did you find that did your father mix with a lot of Holocaust survivors, or did he completely separate himself from it?
What do you think, Ma? I think we had a lot of friends from Europe that Daddy, my father came to this country with a guy who he remained friends with, who was also a Holocaust survivor, and we would always go there, and every Friday night, and remember, and so, and there was a sense of comfort there, knowing that it was okay to speak about it, sort of, not with just anyone, but when you're amongst someone who's been through it, it's a lot easier to talk about it. So yes. But my father also assimilated very well and had a lot of friends who are Americans, so I think, right?
But when you found out that your dad, or did you always know he was a Holocaust survivor?
Always. Well, I always knew because I always asked questions about the number on his arm. That's indelible. It's always been there. Yeah, so I always had questions about that, and so I was very curious at a very young age. Very young.
Have you ever read the book or seen the movie, actually, The Devil's Arithmetic?
Yes.
Where
Arithmetic.
The Devil's Arithmetic, where she never wanted to know her grandmother's stories and grandfather's stories. They bored her, and she just kept thinking, oh, they're all just boring.
And I'm just the opposite.
It's just boring. I've got to go to and to Passover with and listen again to more stories. It wasn't until she actually regressed and went back into, I suppose, a metaphor for learning, like you are, about your parents' past, that she actually she found that it was her past as well. It wasn't just their past, it was her past, and it was her future. And it was her life and her experiences just as much as it was her parents.
I feel that way as well. Absolutely. Yes.
I think it's a lovely gesture to get the tattoo. I don't like tattoos at all, but I think it's a lovely gesture to get the tattoo of your dad on your arm.
Me too. And again, it's very meaningful, and that's why I got it. And it's important. And I can honestly say everybody always asks me about it. And that's exactly why I got it. Because now I can teach tolerance to everyone by my dad's story. So yeah.
And has your dad gone into schools and talked about it?
Yes, he's come into my school. I teach in grammar and a middle school. It's combined. So my dad spoke with the middle school students. So they're between the ages of 11 and 14. And he told his whole story to them. And remember the letters they wrote to you, Dad? they wrote these beautiful letters saying how much they thought he was their hero, and just their hearts really, really were changed by his story. And I think that that's exactly the point of speaking about it and spreading love for everyone, and never to judge a book by its cover, but judge people by their hearts. And yeah,
it's a hard line or road to travel, in a sense, Susan, because on one hand there's the need and the obvious need for history to be taught and for people to learn about your father's experiences. There's also that thin line between that you're juggling and trying to avoid crossing of further traumatizing a victim by having to relive, because some are quite relaxed about reliving their stories. They're used to going into schools. Your father's clearly not. There's a disconnect when it comes to actually, and that is so understandable. That is, yeah. I don't think any of us can ever understand, but I do think it's very important that people are forced, are confronted with what went on, because it can happen again, and it could be a different person it happens to the next time.
That's right. So
it could be the Christian or the Muslim or the Hindu or any other nationality, or it could be anyone at all for any reason who could be alienated. How difficult do you think it is currently? Do you think there's a rise in anti-Semitism that we have to be conscious of, letting people know about the dangers of anti-Semitism?
I do. I think there's a lot of hatred in the world. I don't think it's just for Jews. I think it's for many different kinds of races, religions, and that's why it's so important to tell the story and tell it over and over and over again. So yes, absolutely. I do think there's a lot of anti-Semitism. I think there's a lot of prejudice in the world. And, I teach my students, hate causes war, war causes death. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for love. Love is the answer to everything. Love one another. Can you tell everyone what that soldier said to you about going up in smoke?
Yeah, he said to me,
and this was in Auschwitz. So a soldier was talking to my dad, an SS officer, and my dad thought he was just having a conversation with him. So what did he say, Dad?
Du kannst nur gehen mit Feuer in the Himmel.
And what does that mean, Dad, in English?
Louder, please. You can only go from here, but the Rauch.
What's that?
Rauch.
Can you say it again?
Du kannst nur gehen mit Rauch in Himmel.
And that means
you
again?
You can only go with the smoke into the sky.
And how did that make? What did you think when he said that to you, Dad?
Well, I think maybe God will one day good to me and give me a break.
Which he did, right?
Yeah, which he did, and I thank God. And I have my family now, and I
louder.
And I have a normal life, and I cherish everything that we have.
Yeah.
I have my kids. I have my wife.
You have your grandkids.
I have my grandkids.
And your great-grandchildren.
Oh my gosh, great-grandchildren. Yeah.
Yeah, so my dad has 5 great-grandchildren.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's
you
good.
You don't not look 94 years of age, Michael. It's
not even well,
you don't even look 70.
How do you keep young?
But music keeps me young. I play the violin, I play the mandolin.
And that keeps, and you sing.
And you name the song,
And you'll
and now I'll play it.
Great. And that,
Sing me another song, Michael.
Play fiddle, play. La da dee dum, la da da dum. Hi da dum, da da dee.
you're humming a tune, huh?
Play fiddle, play.
Mhm.
La da dee
Do you find like
dum, la
music
da da
soothes your
dum.
soul?
Well, I always played. I played the mandolin, the
Louder.
violin.
I know.
So
Sing
music.
me a song for a Yiddish song.
Kalt de Nacht an nebeldige finstere Rummedum. Sitzt da jesamo vertreuet und guckt sich herum. Kaif ze binimones, kaif von auf mir Rachmanes. Rate vet da jesamo tutei.
Beautiful, Dad.
Kufit die kaif, die schwebelach anticken. Mit dem wird dir a jesamo bequicken. Kaivze Benemones, Kaif von Abafmir Rachmanes, Ratavetat Yasamu from
Yay, beautiful,
Isn't that gorgeous?
isn't it?
Isn't that
Just
gorgeous?
touches my heart so much.
And I am multilingual. I speak Polish. I speak Russian. I speak Yiddish. So,
You speak English?
pardon me?
He always forgets the English part. I don't know.
You speak English?
I try to speak English.
Susan said,
When I was born, music was right in me. I love to play my fiddle.
I think that music, I think when he was in the camps, he would talk about how he would hear music in his mind,
That's right.
and that music helped him.
Oh yeah.
It gave him the courage for another day, because
but
another day was torture. So like just to get to the next day.
it's hope. It's hope, Susan, and many survivors have said that you can live without food, you can live without love, but you cannot live without hope. And it's that hope that drives you on and keeps you going. And for him and for Michael, your hope was music, and hope, or music gave you that sense of hope to keep going.
Yeah. And then after the war, he also continued his music, playing in Germany, lived in Germany till 1949. And he played in a cafe, right?
Yeah.
The fiddle. And again, so music always stayed with him forever. He never lost that, even after his suffering.
Susan told me you'd play a piece on the mandolin for me.
Yes, let me get it. Let me get that mandolin. You want to play a piece, then?
Yeah.
What do you want to play?
Oh, whatever they want me to play, I'll play.
Whatever you want to play.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you want to play? Here you go. Play a nice song.
Fabulous. Susan, turn the camera.
Oops. Oh my God. Sorry. So sorry. So sorry.
You're okay. That was beautiful.
Ooh, what happened? Yeah. Yay.
He's off in a roll now, as they say.
He's on a roll. He's on a roll.
He's on a roll.
Okay. All right. Beautiful, Dad. Thank you. Beautiful. I think we need to tune this mandolin.
It doesn't matter.
You can still feel the love in his heart of that music
going through his fingers, straight through the fingers to the.
I'll play a nice tango from you. Come Procida.
Play a tango.
Well, it's not tuned out. Let's tune it later, okay? Yeah, we need to tune that. Okay.
Okay, but thank you so much for coming on. It's wonderful to have had husband and wife. First time actually having a husband and wife on camera, even if you're still breaking in the teeth.
She's showing you. What?
I always say Dutch is my Muttersprache. My Mutter hat nicht sprechen können.
What does that mean?
My mother speaks.
My Mutter hat nicht sprechen können and ich kann auch nicht.
What does that mean?
My mother cannot.
Mother couldn't speak it and I can't hear.
I just got as far as my mother couldn't speak. That's about the limit of my German. But Yiddish and German would be very similar.
Yes. Well, that's how Dad survived the war. He said if he wouldn't have known Yiddish, people who weren't Jew, they couldn't understand the guards. So they were tortured even more for not understanding. But my dad says he understood because Yiddish is so similar to German.
And the Greek Jews were the first to really die in Auschwitz because they didn't speak Yiddish and they didn't speak German, so they didn't understand the orders being bellowed at them. So they if you spoke Yiddish, it was so close to the German language that you could understand it anyway, and vice versa.
Right.
But thank you anyway for coming on with me and talking.
You're so welcome. My dad just wanted to show you this one picture of him when he was a young boy. This is him on top.
I have it, and I'm going to put it into the end.
Oh, please. It's just such a treasure to have that somebody had this one, someone gave this to him.
Which is your dad?
After the war. This is my dad right here on top.
On top right.
Okay. Yeah, on the top right. His mother on the bottom here. Here's his mother. Sorry. Okay. This is his brother, his little brother, his poor little brother.
He died.
This is his sister Elka, and her husband who escaped deep into Russia during the war. And my father found her in 1976. After he remembered her address in Russia, and she was still there. And he wrote to her, and they had a reunion in 1976. Amazing. And this was my father's father. Yeah, so very wonderful that we have this. It's a treasurable picture.
If ever there was a video that showed the horrors, the long-term horrors of Auschwitz, I think it's probably this one. Not just on the person themselves, like your dad, but on you, because I don't know if you realize it, but the sorrow that's etched in your face at what your father is suffering is, and the pain is palpable, Susan. And I will say that it's probably the first time I've just come close to not being able to get through this interview. because it's just, the pain is palpable. In not just your dad, but in you. And anyone that would, what have you to say to people who would deny the Holocaust ever happened? I think looking at the two of you would be an example of the impossibility of that.
Yeah. There is nothing to say. What's there to say? To say is, here's living proof of it. Here's living proof of it. His story is living proof of it. Okay. His pain is living proof of it.
And your pain.
And my pain.
Show him this.
Yes. No,
And
I
your
showed it.
Oh, you showed it?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Mary.
Look, continued success, continued peace of mind to all of you, and I hope that this interview hasn't caused any further trauma to any of you. It certainly wasn't. It certainly wasn't meant. But I think you're the type of person that wants to talk about.
Absolutely.
Большое спасибо. Ашеnem dank.
Spasiba. Spasiba. I understand. That's Russian for thank you, isn't it?
У меня чудный русский язык.
Which means?
I could speak a fluent Russian.
Yes.
Yeah.
And German and Yiddish and
Yes.
English. Sing me out.
Sing out a song for them, Mary.
Расцветали яблони и груши, поплыли туманы над рекой. Приходила на мир Катюша. Ой-ой-ой.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Slán. Bye.